All right, we're going to go ahead and dive in. Welcome for you that are on here already, and I'm sure that we'll have some other people jump in. I know typically we're usually somewhere around 15 to 20 people on this Thursday call, and yet we're going to go ahead and dive in. Of course, you guys know me, and so my information's on the screen in case you need it, and yet you guys have that. So our intent is to start on time and end on time always. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. If you have questions, you can take yourself off of mute and ask those questions. Feel free to stop me throughout, or if you put them in the chat box, I'll do my best to, or Mon is actually going to be monitoring that. So he'll bring it to my attention. Hey, there's a question, and then we will make sure that we answer that. Today, we're looking at the organizational model from the business plan, and then step two we're finishing up the step two, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, step 2, beginning with the end in mind. So with that said, that's what we're going to go ahead and dive into. All right. So where are we and where are we going? So in the last few weeks, we have worked on reviewing the 7 habits of highly effective people. Last week, we worked on habit 1, being proactive. We've also reviewed the economic model, lead generation model, and today we're actually hitting that organizational model. Now, last week we started at the habit 2, begin with the end in mind, and then today we're going to actually finish that piece up. The reason that we're doing it this way and we're breaking it down, because the intent is, right, whenever you have business planning clinic in your market center, in your area, or you can take it online, that you do so. And yet I didn't want us to wait until November to start talking about, right, our business plan, because we want to have time to make adjustments, make sure we're looking at our numbers, and then going, okay, do we have that path? As Keith Cunningham, author of The Road Less Stupid, shared with Gary at Megacamp, right? A goal without a yellow brick road path is where we get stuck. So let's ensure that we have a yellow brick road path for 2021, all right? So last week we looked at beginning with the end in mind, and that's where we're gonna finish up habit 2 this week. So last week we asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that question seems a little bit trite, and yet a lot of times we want to look at, are we where we dreamed we'd be? Are we actually being intentional about, where do we want to end up at the end of the day? Because a lot of times we just keep moving forward, but we're not actually being, and we may even be having successes, and yet are those successes taking us to where we desire to be? So that's why that end in mind is so very important. So this today we're going to look at roles and goals. So last week, right, we started a rough draft of your personal mission statement. So that's a work in progress, and we're going to look at that today. It's also important to consider the roles and goals in your life and how they relate to your mission statement. Roles and goals give structure and organized direction to your personal mission statement, right? And you live your life, I live my life in terms of roles. Now, this isn't in the sense of like role playing. We're talking in the sense of authentic relationships and responsibilities that you've committed to. You may have important roles in your family, in your community, at work, or in other areas of your life. Roles represent responsibilities, relationships, and areas of contribution, okay? You may define your family role as simply family member, or you may choose to divide it into a role such as partner or parent. Your profession or work life may contain several roles. For example, you may have one role in administrator and another in marketing. If you're a single agent, right, that's what you do. You've got your hat on as I'm an agent, then you put your hat on as I'm the transaction coordinator, then you put your hat on as, right, there's multiple hats. It's up to you to define your roles in a way that works for you. So what I'm going to ask you to do, go ahead and write down all of your roles. Now, don't be concerned about getting them like quote unquote right now. We just want them down. So just write the ones that you feel that are right for you, right? So I'm going to be quiet and you write, what are the roles that you have in your life? Mom, grandmother, agent, business owner, right? What are your roles? Now, next to that role, write a description of what that optimal performance in that role would look like. So for example, on the screen, you should see sample volunteer. The statement of the optimal performance in that role would be to spend 2 hours at the Children's Center, whatever that is for you, right? Athlete, sample, train to run a 100-miler, or whatever, again, that means to you. So beside each role, write down the optimal performance in that role. Mon, if you will mute everybody, we've got maybe a heavy breather on. It happens. Thank you.
All right, Coach.
And again, y'all can unmute. That way just we don't have any background noise. Now, something that I'd like you to do as well, if you have more than 7 roles, like as you wrote them out, if you have more than 7, combine some of the functions so that you can get down to 7 or less roles. So what happens is when you identify your roles, that actually creates a variety of perspectives from which to examine your life, right? And then as you incorporate your goals into your mission statement, you give balance and harmony into your life. So that's the importance of this piece. Now, this is about all the time we're going to spend on this today, and yet, like, I guess give me a head nod or come off mute. Have you ever looked at your role and had a goal for that, for each role in your world before? Have you looked at it that way before?
Not to each role, I would say.
Yeah, not to each role. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the assumption that happens, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then and I love that, right? That, and I'll use the, you know, the assumption, and we use that, we do that so often, and yet we all know what happens when we assume, right? So this is the cool part about this, is it will give you a different perspective, right, as you examine your life and your mission statements, and you'll also be able to own it at a higher level so that you're saying, yes, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not going to do this. Because again, if not, it becomes that comparison. So I'll, you know, thinking of, and this happens to whether you're man or woman or ladies or dads or not, dads or moms, but we have this view of, and now we have the Pinterest society, right? Like, oh, I should do this. I should do that. Wait a minute. What is it that actually works for you and your family? What is it that works for, you know, what you want your life to look like? So that's where really identifying this is going to make you be able to go, wait a minute, this is for me, my family, me, and my business. Okay, so now that you've identified your roles, it's time to think about the goals that surround your mission. They create a plan of action and help measure whether or not you are successfully living your mission statement. Now, many of the goals that flow from your mission statement will be long-term. Short-term goals, such as weekly goals, are important in your mission statement as well. And we actually do those to the 411 and that type of thing. And yet we are going to later in one of these hour calls, we'll get more into depth about the short-term goals. But right now we want to focus on long-term goals, okay? So we're going to actually set some goals really quickly. Now, before we do, I want you to think of the goals you've had in the past. Did your success have anything to do with your mission? Chances are, if the goal wasn't connected to something important, it didn't get done. And sometimes that's where we run into a challenge. Maybe we go, well, I start a lot of stuff and I don't finish it. Well, have we tied it back to something that's truly important that's going to pull you through when the life gets in the way, right? So take a few minutes and go back and review what you wrote down last week when we started your mission statement. And again, this is just our rough draft. Just take a few minutes and review that. If you weren't on last week's call, now's a good time for you to start this. So what I want you to do, if you weren't on last week's call, to go ahead and just ask yourself a couple of questions. Identify an influential person. One person who had knowingly or unknowingly a positive influence on your life. What are the qualities you most admire from that person? What qualities did you gain from that person? Then you're going to move into defining who you desire to become. A great way to do that is imagine it's 20 years in the future. You've achieved all you've ever hoped to achieve. What is your list of accomplishments? What do you want to have, do, and be? And then you're going to determine what's important to you today. What are the 10 things that are most rewarding to you today? What do you live for and love in life? So if you haven't started your personal mission statement, go ahead and take a picture of this. Just do a screenshot of this so that you can, again, you can come back and do that piece. And it won't stop you from being able to continue with the roles and goals today. This is just, we're going to make sure that they are in alignment with your, right, where you want to go. Okay. So hopefully you guys have had, the ones that did start your rough draft last week, you've had an opportunity to review that. So go ahead and write down 3 long-term goals that you have for your life. Now, for today, we're going to actually just choose one to work on. So I know you're writing down multiple. Just choose one that we're going to work on today. You might choose to circle it or underline it so that it stands out. Now, you'll be able to go back and answer these questions for each long-range goal, and yet we want to walk through one of these. So how do we realize that goal? Well, we want to just identify the what, why, how, and when of that goal. Now, these might seem like simple words and concepts. When applied to your goals, though, they bring them into focus and closer to reality. With every goal you set, it's important to ask yourself what, why, how, and when. Okay, so what? First of all, right, congratulations. You've already completed the first step of manifesting your goals with the what. You've already created, right, at least 1, possibly 3 long-term goals. You've named the goals that's going to bring your life into alignment with what you have decreed is your greater purpose. Okay, so, and if you haven't, let's jot down some goals right this second, because I'm going to actually ask you to walk through this exercise with one of these that's going to internalize it and we'll be able to continue to use this. Okay. So we have our what. Now let's look at our why. So go ahead and answer, why is that long range goal important to me? Why is that long range goal important to me? The intent is to articulate why that goal will serve what you believe in. So why is it important to me? How will that serve what I believe in? Why do you wish to see this goal fulfilled? Now, oftentimes there are clues and secrets that will be revealed when you're doing this. Many times people who might be able to help you and the things you will need in order to achieve what you desire become apparent when this exploration is undertaking. So asking yourself why brings clarity to your goals, and clarity is a key toward determination and action. If you're taking notes, you might want to write that down. Clarity is a key toward determination and action. All right, and you can just do a show of hands. Do you have the why that your long-term goal, one of those, is important to you, or do you need if you're done, kind of give me a thumbs up. If you need a little bit more time, okay, thumbs up. Okay, so we're good. So we know why that's important to you. Now we're going to go to the how. The questions are up here. How will you know when you have arrived? How will you get there? How will you mark the way to seeing your goal realized? How are you going to get it done? How will you empower yourself to achieve this goal? So, right, we've got the what, the why, and then when you've tacked what and why together, that next step is how. Now, I want to walk you through a little bit of an exercise that's going to help you with the how. We want to take the time to visualize and feel the how. Helps you, or taking the time to visualize and feel the how helps you see some of the necessary steps to take in order to achieve your goal. Now, this is perhaps the most critical step in making that all-important transition, transforming your goals from merely ideas and dreams into concrete reality. The more thorough you do this, the easier it will be to make a list of the realistic steps it will take to get you where you'd like to be, okay? And I'm going to show you an example. And I will say this, so some people, their mind goes to tactical. So you may have had a challenge with the why, right? You may kind of got stuck in the why. That's okay. This is a skill we're developing, right? Now, sometimes we get stuck in the how. We know where we want to go. We know what we want to do. We know why we want to get there. And then that how, we kind of get muddled up in there. And so we're going to check out when we say how, these are the questions. Again, you can feel free to take pictures of these slides. Then we want to look at what does that actually mean? So this is an example. A father decides he'd like to improve his relationship with his son. That's one of his goals. His son has faced a lot of challenges lately. The boy's schoolwork is poor and he's fallen in with a questionable crowd of friends. The father loves his son and feels that relationship could be stronger. He's clear about his what and his why. Now for the big how. How do I intend to improve my relationship with my son? The father's first answer was by looking for opportunities. A lot of people would stop right here. That doesn't really give us a concrete. So we say, but how? Well, by investing time. Okay, how? By setting aside specific time. How will you go about that? By making time in my schedule just for him. Okay, sounds good. How? By finding a day where he and I can go do something special. Cool. How? By deciding on an event and taking him with me. Great. How? By going hiking this Saturday. Okay, sounds like a great plan, but still, how? By making sure he is free, by committing to the plan and sticking with it. Excellent. Any more hows? By committing to a time each week to find something just for us to do and sticking to it. Okay, how? By telling him I would like for this to happen so he knows and can begin to be part of the planning process as well. Awesome. How? By committing to being open to his suggestions for things to do so that I can really begin to understand his interests and ideas. How many of you, show of hands, would have stopped at, and there's no right or wrong, this is just right, oh, I'm going to look for some opportunities. Or at least by finding a day where he and I can do something special. Right? And yet the reason that we want to ask these questions is because I can't tell you how often, I'm sure I've done this to my coach, and coaching clients have done this to me, where we say, well, how do you want that to happen? Well, I'm just going to commit to it. Really? If it was that easy, we wouldn't be having this conversation. How are you going to commit to it? Right? Okay. And then and so you want to get really, really intent on that how. Okay. So, and yet how cool is this? Like, how many kids can say that this is how their father figures in their life, right? It's pretty amazing stuff. So now it's your turn. Choose that long-term goal that you're going to work, and you're going to play the how game. Make a list indicating how you are going to achieve your goal. Every time you write down a how, ask yourself exactly how that how will manifest itself. And don't let yourself off the hook so easily, right? Push yourself, get specific, demand your success. Go. Keep going. Okay. So you've got a lot of hows now, yes? Okay. So, and I can see some of you, and so I'm making, and we already just said about assuming. I see you guys furiously writing. So that's awesome. So, okay. So let's look at, now we have the how. Well, you guys have done this, right? How. And now we're going to look at the when. Okay. You've probably heard people talk about cramming the night before an exam or presentation. We've probably said that. Maybe we say we work well under pressure, meeting tight deadlines. How come we're able to do this? Deadlines, right? Now, they can be stressful at times, and yet they mean business, and people respond to them. So what about your goals? Why can't your dreams have deadlines? What if you took your goal as seriously as, let's say, a project at work or a job for a client, right? Aren't your aspirations just as important, if not more important? You know where you're at right now, and you know where you desire to go. Now, when do you desire to be there? It's time to give your long-term goals a deadline. So flip to where you wrote your long-term goals, and you're going to set a deadline for each of them. Now, we're working on one today, so flip to that one and write a deadline. By when? Okay. Now that we have the by when, what was it, Tanya, were you going to add something? You're muted. You're muted, Tanya.
So how do I determine if it's an actual realistic goal that I can master this, my what? Like I may think, okay, I can do this in 2 months, but realistically I might not can.
So we're going to, that's okay. Put your date and I'm going to help you with that. That's our next step. That's a great question. Yeah.
Okay.
And that keeps us from setting things. So again, and I always use this when you guys have heard me use this one. It's just one that I think everybody can relate to. So there is so for instance, let's say that I want to weigh 125 pounds. And I said, I'm going to do that in 2 months. Unless I'm willing to lose an arm and a leg, that's not happening. Right. And so then I go, okay, what is the time frame for that? So that's the hows is going to help some of that. So we've narrowed it down. We've got the how game. And now before we set it on that journey, you need to know what that path looks like. And that's going to help you, right? Is our timeline correct? So number one, are there many steps involved with a goal, or does it require a few major milestones, right? So we're going to start brainstorming all of the steps that are involved. This means everything from phone calls to budgets to delegating tasks. You may need to purchase things, talk to advisors, or do some networking. So what is it going to take to get you from where you are to there? So if you look at your how list, you actually may have identified some of the steps already. And yet we're going to brainstorm steps that will take you to your goal. Okay. So right now, look at your how to, and then write down any other steps that you need to take in order to get to that goal. I'll give you about 1 more minute. Any steps you can think of that needs to be in place? Who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to let know? What do you need to change? Where do you need to put it in your schedule? Just brainstorming is what we're doing. Do we need to take something off of our plate so that we can put this onto the plate? Do we need to read a book about it? Do we need to go to a class? All right. All right. Good job. Now, and I know I'm not like, because again, for time's sake, you could probably spend a lot more time on that, and you probably should. And yet you're starting to see, right, how the process goes. So now what good are directions if they aren't in some kind of order? So take a look at the steps in your list and prioritize them to the best of your ability with what you know right now. Which things must come before others? Write a number 1 by it. And then what's the next one? A number 2, and then a number 3. Which ones can wait until further down the road? So take an inventory of what's there and just give it a whirl. Put it in priority. Or put it in, prioritize the list. All right. Now we're going to put it all together. Now, this is a form that we're going to actually, we're going to put it in the open sources. So it will be in your hub. The name of it will be Goal Planning, and it will be in your hub so that you can take this and you can print it so that you can do this for all 3 of your long-term goals. And you can use it for any goal, right, that you're going to do. This might be something you introduce to your entire business, right, when you're doing goal planning. So long-term goal, this is the what. So in here, when you get this form, right now you're just doing it on a free piece of paper, which is fine. You're going to get this form and you're going to write the what. You're going to write the name of the goal you selected, right, in this game. And then you're going to put in deadline, write the deadline. And in this section, important mission or roles, make sure you have the why, right? Summarize your why responses. Make sure that they resonate with you. And in the section steps how, you're going to list the goal steps in order that you have prioritized them. And then finally, the deadlines when column to the right give you each step a potential deadline, right? So this is the how, this is the deadline. And then it's up to you, right? With the what, why, how, and when identified your goal, you're on your way to success. Now, you can, of course, use the same process again with all of your goals. Since you've broken your goals into steps, you can actually schedule those steps into your week, your day, and even the present moment. So thinking about what can you get done today, tomorrow, or next week that will bring you that much closer to your final destination. See if you can, because then you can project a bit and schedule, just say the first 3 steps on your list into your planning system. The rest will come later, and then you go for it. And that makes sure that you're moving ahead each day with the vision of that goal in mind, and you're pressing forward. So I'd love to hear from somebody. You can take yourself off mute or type it in the chat box, and Mon will read it out loud for us. Any ahas from that exercise? What else will you use it on? So who's going to share with the group?
I think, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
All right, we'll take Sylvia and then Tanya.
Sorry, I did not type anything for Mon, but I would say that one of the ahas is it's really easy to write a goal, right? But if you don't have an accountability partner that will make sure that you stick with what you say, it will become, more of a dream rather than a goal that can be achieved, if it makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, because that's, we can say it, and then are we going to actually do it, right? And then what's that time frame so that we know? Perfect, thank you for sharing. All right, Tanya?
I have, okay. One thing I have determined what my goal is, why, but one thing I'm going to have to do is, but to implement it, I'm going to have to take my feelings out of it. As a high I need to just do it whether I want to or not. Because I never want to do these things. You try to make me and I'm still pushing you, but I have to whether I want to or not.
Well, it goes back to which one are you more committed to? And this is for everybody. Are we more committed to our comfort level and what we currently like, or are we more committed to that growth or having that long-term goal? Mm-hmm. And taking out any bad, right, wrong, or good. Because I think about I know that many of you guys, with my running, when I first started running, it was a little over a year ago. I didn't want to do it. I was just tired of being where I was. I was more tired of being where I was than not wanting to do that anymore. Now, the cool part is by doing the steps and taking that in place, all of a sudden I enjoyed what I was doing. Now, I'm actually working on more speed. So I'm now back into that when I feel like I'm not winning some days, yet I'm more committed to the outcome than how I feel in the present moment, right? Because I know when after that, I'll feel better. I'll be excited that type of thing. So perfect. Yes, it's really just going, what am I more committed to? Love that. All right. So you now have a process and a step from I have this goal to how do I, and I have a deadline to what has to happen, how do I make it happen, and there's steps. Because otherwise, as Sylvia said, the goal just becomes a wish. Okay. So again, we're gonna, so far we've looked at habit 1 being proactive. Proactive people do more than take initiative. They recognize that they are responsible for their own choices and have the freedoms to choose based on principles and values rather than on moods and conditions. Goes right back to what you said, Tanya, right? Proactive people are agents of change. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Individuals, families, teams, and organizations shape their own future by creating mental vision and purpose for any project, large or small, personal or interpersonal. They identify and commit themselves to the principles, relationships, and purposes that matter most to them. Ineffective people have no end in mind. And then even if we have success, is it the direction that we would like to have? That makes me think of somebody that maybe they were successful throughout their entire career, but when they are 70, nobody likes them and they don't have family and nobody visits them. That probably they may have began without that end in mind, right? Okay, so the last piece of this is developing the personal mission statement, and then we're going to look at the organizational, we're going to run through the organizational chart. Part of our activities from last week to this week was going back through your personal mission statement and rewriting it. So this is, so again, if you have, great. If you haven't, review what you've written, circle the key ideas, words, and phrases that you would like to include in your mission statement so that we go to, okay, I have a rough draft, and then we're going to actually finish it up. So last week we looked at that, these as examples of our rough draft of our personal mission statement. One thing I did not do, and I said, and I had intended to do, and I just realized that I didn't do it, is I did not send out these as an example for you, but you can always Google personal mission statements. But my intent is that when you come back to this call in 2 weeks, because make a note, we do not have a call next week. We originally did, and yet Profit Camp is going to be on Wednesday. So my request is that everybody is at Profit Camp from 1 to 4 on Wednesday, which means go ahead and let us know if you're going to be in it. Let's get you registered. The Mastery clients, there's no charge for you. We want to go ahead and get you into that. And so that's why we're not going to have this class, so that we're not doubling up on trainings. But go ahead this week and write out, if you haven't, your rough draft of your personal mission statement. One of the things that we talked about last week, just take 5 minutes, compose that rough draft. It can be a poem, it can be a song, it could be, heck, the Dalai Lama's is one line: to cultivate a universal responsibility for one another and the planet we share. And then we want to think about, we're just dating this. We're going to make adjustments and make changes, and that's okay. And yet, how do we know that we're marching in the direction that we desire? Because we're moving in the direction of our personal mission statement, okay? That is your job this week, is to complete your mission statement. And in 2 weeks, you're going to bring that with you. And there's no right or wrong. Some of yours will be beautiful and elegant and long and pretty, and some of yours will be one sentence, and it's personal for you, so that's what matters, okay? We said we're dating it because step 6 of developing that personal mission statement, you're going to periodically review and evaluate it. So do I feel that this mission statement represents the best within me? Do I feel direction, purpose, challenge, and motivation when I review my mission statement? Am I living my life according to the ideals and values that are incorporated in my mission statement, right? So if your mission statement's up so that you can see it, every month or so, you're going to ask the following questions. And over the years, it is possible that it will change. So, okay. So So that's your activity for this week. Paul, if you've already attended Profit Camp, is there still no charge? I actually do not know the answer to that question. Mon, if you will do me a favor and email our events team, our email, just make a note. We'll email and find that out, Paul, and let you know, because I do not know the answer to that.
All right, that's noted, Coach.
All right, thank you. Okay, now, the fun part of today. I think it's all fun. I'm excited about this. The organizational model. Now, many of you have seen this before. You want to see it as often as possible because remember, we're always thinking, are we beginning with the end in mind? Now, it is not, and Gary says we don't actually have to know where we're going to end up. That's not as important as making sure that we are really owning and nailing where we are, right? That's the most important piece. And yet, we want to kind of have an idea of the overview. Now, a lot of us know this from The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Well, that was written many, many years ago. So there's been a lot more research. Things have changed and been updated. So this is the updated piece of that, okay? So the 7 levels are actually different. Now, when we talk 7 levels, we're actually talking 7th level means you have an expansion team. Now, and even expansion partners. Now, I think a lot of times we think 7th level meaning like, where am I going to quote unquote retire? Where am I going to step out of the day-to-day? Shoot, you could do that at level 4. You could do that at level 5. Like there's no, right? So you might have a different idea of what that looks like. And yet let's run through these. So 7 levels of the MREA. First level, it's you, right? This is before you hire help. Now, one of the first level goal is personal productivity. That is the goal in first level. You are learning scripts, you're role playing, you're doing 3 hours of lead generation, you're working with buyers and sellers, and you're doing the administration. When you're doing all that you can do, that's when you hire help. If you haven't already, though, because this is what happens is we start thinking about how to hire people and how to lead people when we need people. If you think that if you have any intentions of your business growing more than it is today, write this down. You need to be in career visioning. You need to take that once a quarter for the next year, right? And not just the first class. That's the other thing. Everybody takes how to hire somebody. There's a 3-step process because once I hire them, if I do a great job of hiring them and I don't have a place for them or a way for them to, like they're 30, 60, 90, I don't have a way in place to train them well, talent is going to leave you. And then we want to go, okay, 30, 60, 90, they're amazing. How do I make sure that they don't outgrow me and want to leave? Well, you've got to create. Ben Kinney has shared about this in his, when you do that success through others. So he's got people in his organization that's been with him 10, 15, years. Part of that is once they're owning their job, he might go in and buy a commercial property with them. So while that job only is going to pay so much, right? Now he's creating other wealth opportunities for them. So it's so important that we're in that career visioning because that's another skill level that we need if we're going to make growth. So now we're doing everything that we can. We're going to hire help. That takes us to the 2nd level. The goal of the 2nd level is hiring, succeeding through others. We want to make certain that we're hiring and we're talking leverage, not delegation. Now, when we first hire somebody, there is delegation. Here, you do that, you do this, right? Leverage is different. Leverage is saying, this is how to do it, this is where to do it. Now, I want you to own that and report it back to me, okay? So we want to make sure that as the rainmaker, are you, you're still learning and mastering your scripts, you're still role playing, you're doing your 3 hours of lead generation, you're working with buyers and sellers, and that you've been through career visioning, that you're reading leadership books, right? Are you leading that person? Are you doing weekly conversations, right? Now, some of the common questions, when, how, and how much do I pay? When you're doing everything that you can, Now, every area is different. So typically when you're averaging, or when you're on pace to do about 35 units, that's when you want to bring in that admin. Now, the reason that I say depends on the area, because let's say that your price point, like your commissions are 12,000, 14,000, you can actually afford to bring on an admin before somebody in an area that their average price point is 150 or 180, right? So that's why it's a rule of thumb. You also want to be thinking, so that covers the when, that covers, and then how. There's, the first hire is your most important hire. Now, before you hire your full-time person, you might get a transaction coordinator, right? Somebody in your office, or a transaction coordinator company. It might be a virtual assistant that's going to leverage some of these things off for you. If we're talking the pay of a true like full-time admin, a good rule of thumb is to look at what the average pay in your area. So what I typically tell people is look at what your director of first impressions and your MCA is making. Somewhere in there is going to be, right? Because if you look at Hollywood, California, for that admin, you're going to probably be paying, you could be paying $50,000, $60,000. In a smaller area where people make less, you might be able to pay, 25 to 35,000, right? And yet, when we look at this person, we are not looking at, we want emerging talent. So that means, it's not that they make, the most, but do they have a track record of success? Can they grow with the business, right? Some of the common mistakes is that we try to make their pay completely dependent on, what we get paid for commission wise. Now, because obviously a not licensed person, we can't pay commission. The thing is if they're an admin behavioral style, they don't want the feast and famine. That's why they're not starting their own business, right? So make sure that you're, hiring, you're paying appropriately. Make sure you're walking through the entire career visioning process when you hire. Make sure that you're leveraging the training. So some of the leveraging of the training, you've got Ignite in your market centers. Send them through Ignite. Send them through the Perfect Real Estate Assistant. One of the greatest things about Keller Williams is most businesses have to create their own HR department, their own training department. Are you leveraging those pieces with your hire? Personally, for yourself, are you leveraging those pieces right before you hire? So that's, now we get back to the point we're doing everything that we can and we can't do any more. Now we're looking at the third level. So when we look at the third level, we're looking at leadership and systems. That is the goal, laying the foundations for growth. I do want to make sure that everybody hears me, because right here is typically where, between here and 5th, 6th, 7th level, many of us do things a little bit different. And I think sometimes we get really stuck in, well, this is what the model is, or I don't like the model. Keep in mind that the model is just best practices. You might choose to go outside of the model. Gary says just have a damn good reason for doing it, right? That's the intent. So, so you, and then your lead admin, and then your transaction coordinator. I will say those words are interchangeable, right? Maybe the person you bring in is the first person you bring in. They're going to handle all your marketing, your transaction coordinating, the whole bit, right? So don't worry about, well, they're my transaction coordinator, I want them to be my lead admin. Okay, like those words are interchangeable, if that makes sense. We're just talking two people that are helping. And so some of the common mistakes is the transaction coordinator, or that second person, reports directly to the agent. No, they should be hired by and report to the lead admin, which means at level 2, are you having your admin go through trainings? Are they going through career visioning and the entire process? Are they learning leadership skills? Because they are going to bring on that next person. And you as a rainmaker, you have a part to play in that career visioning process, but you want them to own that, and that person reports directly to that lead admin, okay? You want to make sure that we have defined job descriptions, and then the training. So again, if you think that you're moving to this direction, if your intent is, don't be like so many agents and start going, oh, I need to hire somebody. Let me go to that class. You want to start now. So part of your role is, okay, I'm a real estate agent and I'm doing these things, and I'm going to quote unquote night classes. I'm going to go to these, I'm going to get a growth plan. I'll work with Olivia. I'll work with my coach to create a growth plan for what do I need to do? Who am I becoming for that next level, right? So let me get my job descriptions. Let me get, right, where are we going type thing. Okay. So then we move into the fourth level. The fourth level is when we bring on a showing assistant or a buyer's agent. Now, when we look at, and what with these models, this just tells us how are we going to be the most efficient and the most productive and profitable. Most productive and profitable would be bringing in a showing assistant first. So we would be leveraging the buyer side. So you're not working with any more buyers. You're leveraging the buyers in that lead generation, right? So you've got new talent. This is the other thing. Maybe you bring them in as a showing assistant with the goal of within 90 days, 120. It's like they have the right to earn their way into a buyer's agent role, right? And then some people come right here and bring on a buyer's agent. It depends on, are they emerging or proven talent type thing, right? The other piece that we're looking at is hiring a lead manager. Now, the lead manager, they're doing outside sales and inside sales. Now, this could be, maybe you go, okay, I'm going to hire a person, or maybe you go, I'm going to hire, because we always want to look at leverage systems and tools first. So maybe, and really this would be when you're looking to hire the person, but maybe up to this point, you've hired a phone animals or a conversion monster, a company that helped you with lead generation, making phone calls and that type of thing, right? Now, they're not going to have as great of results typically as you are, but there may be some points through this that you need to hire to make sure that piece continues to work. You always want to play red light, green light in there. But so again, if you notice, there's only 3 direct reports. You have the showing assistant, the lead admin, and then the lead manager OSA. So right now, all 3 of the people that report are you, the lead manager, and the showing assistant. Y'all are all responsible to generate leads, right? You're all responsible for calling, following up, that piece of thing. And then we've got 4th level part 2, and this is where we're going to actually wrap today's call. There are a few of you on the call that are beyond this, and yet we'll finish up the organizational chart next week because I want to kind of be able to answer questions today. So the 4th level, part 2 is you, that admin, that transaction coordinator, lead buyer's agent. Now you've brought in some additional showing assistants potentially. This model right here supports anywhere from 150 to about 240 closings. Now, I know there's one team that I coach that they're going to hit 300 this year, and it's 3 agents, and they just hired their 3rd admin. So that's what I'm saying, again, a general rule of thumb, right? And yet, some of the common mistakes here, because we haven't went through the steps, we have too many people reporting to you. So you've got 5, everybody's reporting to that rainmaker, which interferes with them doing their job. So you want to make sure, do we have the right people reporting? Do we have people reporting? Do we have leadership? Do we have strong accountability? Now, sometimes the question becomes like, how much do we pay these people? So a good rule of thumb is a lead buyer's agent. They're typically definitely never over 50%, but the recommendation is a 60-40 split, 60 for the team, 40 for the buyer's agent. If they bring in their own, maybe they bring in their own piece of business, now they would get the extra 10% that would typically go to the OSA or ISA. And then the showing assistants are paid outside of are part of the buyer's agent. The reason that this works though is because now we're talking volume and the intent, like again, Jen Davis, her team, her showing partners, they're making 75,000 plus a year in an area that their average price point's only $180,000. So we're not talking about, everybody in this, this can make really good, right? A good living, right? It's just going to depend on where they fit in your model, where they have the opportunity to continue to grow from. So I'm going to pause right here. And I'll take questions. So again, you can unmute yourself. I can go back to first level, fourth level. We can go back anywhere, or you can type it in the chat box. What questions do you have, or maybe even comments of something that you've learned from here or from another class? Who's going to share with the group? I can always just start like picking names.
I wish I could say something, because I definitely need to take a lot of classes before I'm even able to talk about any of the levels, I think.
Well, and so that's perfect. So that's one of the things, just make sure write down growth plan. And then you and I can create, right? When we look at 2021, what's our growth plan? Because that's the other thing is sometimes we take classes just to take classes. Are we taking the classes, right? That'd be like going to college, because, right, Keller Williams University, we got lots of classes. Well, if I'm going to college to be for a dentist, I probably don't need to take a construction class. Are we taking the classes that are going to fit our business and where we want to go? So yeah, definitely we'll look at making sure that we have that growth plan in place. Awesome. All right, who else? Question, thought, aha?
Olivia, what about job descriptions? Where do you find those?
So you can find them on KW Connect. And yet so you can definitely find them on KW Connect. And that's the career visioning. So they have them available. You want to make sure that you're going through the career visioning class. Yeah.
And then another question, when let's say you're at the lead buyer agent phase, are you getting somebody who's a newbie, or what should be your goal? Is getting somebody that's new, that's going to train, or somebody who has a lot of experience?
Okay, so that's actually a really great question. One of the things that we always want to do whenever we're hiring is we want to make sure, and that's one of the most common mistakes, is that we're not looking to develop our bench, and we immediately go to new. Now, they can be, in my answer to this, let's say a showing assistant that you want to bring in to be a buyer's agent. They could be a new agent. My question is, do they have previous sales experience? Now, sales experience doesn't have to be in sales. And what I mean by that, because I want to know, like, again, we are looking at what is their track record. So for instance, let's say that they're getting out of college, but they were the best Girl Scout cookie selling, okay, you've got sales experience. My background when I came into real estate was I used to manage a daycare. Now, it was a pretty big one. We had like 170 kids, but if you would have asked if I had sales experience, I would have told you no. And yet if you would have delved deeper, my job when a parent was to come in was to, right, sell them on why we were better than anybody else. And we were in the Spring, Houston area, so they had lots of choices, right? So that's where, okay, I've got a brother that's a phenomenal salesperson. He used to be he grew a team. He was the regional director here in the Gulf States, and he was a horse trainer. So I might not immediately think, and yet if you ask enough questions, he had been buying and selling horses and things like that for years, right? So that's why his first year, he was off and running. He made over 100 grand in a small price point area his first year, right? So we want emerging talent. They don't necessarily have to have their license. Sometimes it's better if they don't already have their license, but are we interviewing enough people to find the talent? And a good rule of thumb is 100. If we want to find somebody that's great. We want to, are we looking and talking with, at least getting 100 applications and then going through, right? So that was a great question, Donna. Thank you for that. All right.
Can
Now-
I add something?
Yes.
I did the personality type for, the DISC profile. I don't know if any of you guys have done it, but I highly recommend doing it, not just for yourself, but for those that you may want to hire. It's called DISC.
Yeah, it is absolutely one of the steps of making that hire. And then even amongst your team, right? How do I work this way? I work that way. It absolutely makes a big difference. Okay. All right. So let's see. We're going to come back into these other ones, and we're going to actually dive back in a little bit deeper. If you have questions, I did an entire hour-long class on that entire thing where we get really, really deep into that. Shoot me an email. I'd be happy to send that out to you. Again, it's really in depth of pay and the entire piece of that, if that's something that would be beneficial. So action steps. Now, again, we're not going to meet for 2 weeks because next week, Profit Camp. We're doing our budget model. Let's make sure, right? We're business owners. That means that we should understand our numbers. Numbers are the language of business. So in 2 weeks, we'll meet again. You're going to have read through habit 3, all the way through habit 3 in your the 7-step habits of highly effective people. You're going to complete the business plan 1 and 2 and send that to me. I have some of yours. If I don't, you're going to complete that 1 and 2 before next Thursday and send it to me. And you're going to begin working on your budget plan for 2021. And that's why I want you guys in that Profit Camp. And then you're going to complete your personal mission statement. Okay. All right. That's what we'll wrap. Oh, the last piece is I do know that Mon's going to send out a questionnaire for you guys in the next week or so. I'd love for you guys to answer, go through and answer it. It's going to be like, are these extra training pieces, are they beneficial? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? Right? So that way, when we're building out what next year looks like for you as well, that fits what you guys are looking for. So with that note, have an amazing Thursday. And I'll see you guys this week on our calls. Otherwise, we'll be back together as a group in 2 weeks. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.